My name's Jason Weaver, and I've been active and out about this subject for about 10 years, but I've known about them since I was a little boy. I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, a town called Sackett's Harbor. It's right on Lake Ontario. It's about 30 miles south of the Canadian border. I always tell people it's up there between nothing and nowhere. They have two seasons there. They have winter and the 4th of July, not like Georgia, which has July 8 months of the year, you know. Man, I'm glad it's cool today, let me tell you. But my hometown is a very historic town. It's like history's best kept secret. A lot of stuff has happened there. There's an army barracks there. It was not active now, but it's very active during the War of 1812. It's right on the Canadian border, so the British used to attack the town. So it's embedded with a lot of history. And when I came to get more involved in the subject as an adult, I found out that Sackett's is it's hard to see there, but Sackett's has its place in Bigfoot history as well. And what it is this is an account that was printed in the Sackett's Harbor newspaper in the year 1818, where a farmer of, I can't see the words, but they basically say the farmer has a great reputation. He's not known as a man who lies, stretches the truth. And it was called a wild man sighting or encounter. You know, not all of the sightings in the world have been known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. They're both kind of relatively new terms. They always used to use wild men. And this wild man was spotted, and you can read the article. This is on the BFRO website. It's New York State, Jefferson County. It's the only encounter there, but it ain't the only encounter that's happened there, because I'm proof of that, because I had an encounter there as well. And I'm going to get into that. But this historic account explains how they put together a posse and went chasing after this wild man. No fruition from it or anything, but when I read that, I got a chill down my back, because it took me back to my encounter as a little boy. Now, I'm a little shaky, I'm a little nervous. I don't mind publicly speaking, but I don't always talk publicly about Bigfoot, okay? So I'm also a little bit of emotional, because if I talk about it in the detail that I'm going to talk to you about it, I immediately regress back to my 11-year-old self. And my 11-year-old self didn't embrace it, okay? So I'm just going to let you know that. As I said, I grew up on a dairy farm, and it was a small farm. We had about 80 head, and farm life was farm life. You know, I liked it. I was the youngest in my family. I didn't have to do a whole lot of work on the farm at that, at age 2 or 3 years old, but I liked doing it, carrying milk jugs and buckets and that kind of stuff, and feeding calves and playing in the hay and that kind of stuff. But my father's health got bad, and we ended up selling our farm, and we bought my mother's parents' place, my grandparents' place, and it had a farm there too, but it was more of a hobby farm. My grandfather had a pig barn that was built. It wasn't one of these kind of barns. It was like a lean-to type barn. The low end was at about 5 to 6 feet, and the high end was at about 11 to 12 feet. Okay, I'm just painting a story for you, or a picture for you. This little red X right here, that's where I grew up, okay? All of this right here, and it keeps going, this just has to be a screenshot I say. This is all heavy wooded area. A lot of game, a lot of fresh water, a lot of cover, and a lot of fun as a kid. I loved running in the woods. I loved playing. I was the youngest in my family, as I said, and I lived out in the boonies. Lived on a dead-end road. I had a couple of friends on the road, but for the most part, I played by myself. I used to play Davy Crockett and Cowboys and Indians, and I used to fashion spears and bows and, all that kind of stuff. And you can see my neck of the woods probably right about that much right there, okay? But this right here, it's a mecca for hunting and living, okay? So, one summer day, I'm not really sure what part of the year it was, but it was berry picking season. I want to say August, September. I'm not really sure what time of the year it was. Let me preface this with, we had cattle. As I said, we didn't have 80 head. We had more of a hobby farm. We had usually about a dozen heifers, a milk cow or two, horses, geese, chickens. I raised guinea pigs and rabbits and all that kind of stuff. And the way our barn was set up, when you come out the door of the barn, we had two pastures, and there was a tree line down the middle of them. And I had a horse that was a gelded Arabian, and he was beautiful, but he didn't get along with other livestock, so we couldn't pasture the horse and the cows together. So what we would do is we put the cows on one pasture and the horse on the other. And as they grazed, my horse over here had a real long lead rope, probably 20 foot long, tied to an old tractor tire rim. And he had water out there and everything, but he would graze in a circle, and then I would move the tire and he would graze. And when he'd beat down that pasture, we'd swap them over to the other, and the cows were, because they were grain fed, corn fed, but also pasture fed or grass fed. So our cows were very, they were contained, they were easily contained. We didn't have barbed wire. The center one here was barbed wire, but this field over here the cows were contained with one single strand of electric fence all the way around. And sometimes they'd get out, but very rare they would get out. Well, something was spooking our cattle in the summer of 1980, and we would hear them bellowing, and we'd go down there with our flashlights and not see anything. And the fence, as I said, it was a single strand of electric fence that was, this high, okay? And so whatever it was, we thought it was wild dogs, coyotes, or we call them up there, we call them coy dogs. They're kind of a coyote, wild dog hybrid. And we thought maybe coy dogs were messing with the cows and they were scooting under the fence and that kind of thing. Well, we had a calf come up missing, and we figured it wandered under the fence. So we went looking for him into the woods. This was my house. My house is gone now. It's a new house. My house is here. The barn is gone also. It was here. See this group of trees right here? It's grown out this way, but this used to be a fence line. And our pasture was part of this, and I, swapped them back and forth. And what happened was we went into these part of the woods looking for the cattle, because they used to, like I said, if they got out, they'd wander in the woods. We wandered about 300 or 400 yards in the woods, and we found the carcass of the calf, and its back legs were broken. At least one of them. I don't really remember if it was both of them, but I do recall at least one of them being broken. And the calf's head was missing. You could tell that something had twisted that calf's head and pulled it off, okay? And, if you know anything about cattle, the neck part even at a calf, that's a muscular part of a cow. And anything that has the strength to pull that off is pretty amazing. But we couldn't wrap our heads around it, because who's going to think? No, I'm just saying, I'm alluding to it. Our parents said, they wrote it off, wild dogs, whatever. Then I started having my geese coming up missing and my ducks. And we found a goose 11 or 12 feet off the ground in the notch of a tree. And it looked like the neck was gone, looked like it had been eaten, and then set up there for later. My parents saw it in the tree and said, "Hawk did that." You ever messed with a goose? Geese are not easy. They're asses. I don't see a hawk taking a geese out of a duck pen, okay? But okay, Ma, whatever you say. And so, again, this is going on through the course of a whole summer. It's not, every day, but certain things are happening. I had these rabbit hutches that had little doors on them. And they had those little, I don't ever know what to call them, bolt locks or whatever, where they're in a notch, you lift it up, you slide it, and you drop it down. Well, that's what these locks were on this hutch. And the locks were broken, so I had made some dowels out of some sticks, and I'd shoved them in there. And because if I didn't keep them closed, rabbits would bop the heads up, and they'd get out. So something was getting into these hutches and taking my guinea pigs, taking my rabbits. And as odd as it sounds, my parents alluded to other neighbor kids. It's just kids messing with you, okay? They're just taking them to mess with you. They're being mean. Because I was the youngest and I got picked on, that's, pecking order as a kid in the country, And, but then we started finding little guinea pig carcasses on the barn roof. And, well, of course, could be hawk, could be, but we're finding them in trees too. And I don't know birds that just leave whole carcasses. Usually they're all picked together. These were eaten, the legs were bit off, but they were just like, oh my God. And then like something had set it up for a snack later or whatever. But again, we're trying to, I have very pragmatic parents, okay? My parents grew up in the Depression. And, so they were very, work, we don't have time for this silliness and that kind of thing. So you just put it off, When one night, as I said, the cows were spooked and some of them got out. We had 4 or 5 that got out. And so we had to go into the woods to look for these cows. And cows, they run in a straight line. They don't care. They just brrr and, they're hard. I hate chasing cows, especially, I hate doing it up and down hills and, But, so a couple of my friends, myself, my brother, and a couple of his friends, we take up, handfuls of baling twine to fashion harnesses to bring the cows home. So we'd go out in the woods, and when we'd find one of the cows that was out there, we'd harness it up, and 2 of us would take the cow back up to the pasture. And we were missing one. We had found all but one. And so my brother and one of his buddies, they went off into the woods to see if they could find this other cow. And while they were gone, we found it over here. So 2 guys did, as I said, harnessed her up and took her up the hill. And then myself and one of the other guys left, sat and waited for my brother and his friend. We were waiting for a while, probably 15, 20 minutes. And then we hear a ruckus in the trees. And I can see my brother and his friend running to beat all, okay, through the woods, crashing. My nickname is Charlie, okay? I don't have Charlie in my name, but my brother has called me Charlie since I was little, because when I was a little boy, I had really blonde hair, and he said I looked like Charlie Brown, okay? So I was Charlie. My brother, and I love my brother, and he was my hero. Anything he told me to do, I did, because he was my hero. And I heard him yell, "Charlie, run." So they're running, I'm running. So we both, me and the other guy are waiting. We get up and we run up the hill. We get to the barn. We're catching our wind, and they call my brother Weaver. My last name's Weaver, obviously. And they're like, "Weaver, what are we running from?" And my brother says, "We saw big monkey people, and one of them chased us." Well, his friends start ridiculing him, like, Weaver thinks he saw Bigfoot. And my brother snickered, but I know my brother. My brother was not kidding, And to this day, my brother will not talk about it. He lives on the property still. He will not talk about it. And he's had things happen, and when things happen, he's one of these guys that I ain't talking about it because of ridicule and, that kind of thing. So that was the summer before. So I'll go back to where I was. Summer of 1981, I'm down picking berries. And I'm picking in this meadow. Okay? And how it worked is there was an active road. You can kind of still see it. This is a dead-end road. The road ended here, and then this is a hill. And then this road goes all the way down here. It's a tractor road. I only got a corner of it, but right over here is another big dairy farm, okay? And this was called the Eatley Farm. And Mr. Eatley used to grow hay in these various fields back here, so he had tractors running up there all the time. Well, what we would do is we'd go take the tractor road, and then we had another road that kicked off this way. It's under this thing I made here. And then there was a trail. The road would go like this, and then there was a trail that would come off and lead to this meadow. And what my cousin and I was 11, and my cousin Jerry was 9, and Jerry is my step cousin. His mother married my mother's brother, so I didn't grow up with him, didn't know him my whole life. They actually had just built their house in this area, so I didn't know him real well, okay? But we became buddies, and we had snuck down through these woods this way instead of taking the trail. We had a pump house down here, and we had power running to the pump house, so we had a clear way where the poles were that ran the power down. So we went that way, and we come the back way on the berry thicket that was down there. I explained that to you because it's the only way I can figure out how what happened. You know, I'm not saying we snuck up on them, but I think we approached the field in a way where they weren't expecting us to come that way, okay? So we went down there. Like I said, his name is Jerry, and you got to picture this kid. I haven't seen him in 30-something years. He's got a lot of problems, emotional problems. He's in and out of jail and prison, but I don't think all of his problems are alluding or as a result of Bigfoot, but I think this had something to do with his problems as an adult, because we were picking berries. And when you're picking berries as a kid, you know, have y'all ever picked blackberries? Anybody? Okay, well, you know, when you're picking blackberries, it's usually one in the bowl, two in the mouth, you know, it's because it's a beautiful day and you're picking. And so I drew this, pardon my drawing, okay? I did what I could do. This is the meadow, okay? And here's the trail that I was telling you about that took you off the tractor road, and this is just the corner of the meadow. And this right here is how the berry thicket would grow in and out. These are berries. These are berries. This is me, and this is my cousin Jerry, okay? So we're picking, and you know when you're picking berries, you reach in the cluster, or reach into the thicket, and you pull them berries down in your hand. If they're ripe, they fall in your hand. If they're not, they don't. But when you're picking those berries, especially if you're having a berry picking contest, your eyes are on the next cluster because you're looking for the next one to move to, you know? So that's what was going on, and you're eating, and, you know, well, my cousin Jerry is standing here. He starts to go into a kind of a breakdown. Now, again, you gotta pardon me and forgive me because it's an emotional thing for me, because when I talk about it, it takes me right back there. So he goes into a meltdown. I want to go home. 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 And I'm looking at him like, what is wrong with this kid? And he did. He dropped his bowl, and he ran behind me off the trail like his tail was on fire, and he ran home. And I thought, what a weird kid. More berries for me, okay? So go on. You know, I didn't worry about it. So I'm picking, as I said, I'm reaching into the berry thicket, and I'm picking berries, and I'm eating. And to my right, where Jerry had run, I heard a terrible whistler, real loud, enough to get my attention. And I look over, and I'm like, it was coming from like this area over here. And I'm like, knock it off, Jerry. I know that's you. Knock it off. I keep picking. And I'm working my way around this cluster, okay? So I go back to picking berries, and I hear the whistle again. And I was reaching into the bush, and I turned my head, and when I reached into the bush, I touched hair. Now, I've touched a lot of things in berry bushes. I've touched birds and bird nests and snakes. Snakes love to sun themselves, you know. I've reached into the bush and felt a snake moving right under my fingertips. You know, you feel the scales on the snake. I'd never touched hair before. So as soon as I touch hair, I pull my hand back, and I can see something. So I'm standing about here. And I'm doing one of these. I'm probably 7 to 8 feet away from the bush. And I'm trying to figure out what it is I'm seeing, because the shape doesn't look right. Doesn't look like a deer. We don't have bear in that area. Doesn't look like a dog. And I still can't figure out what it is. So, but every time I would lean, this thing would shift. Now I'm going to tell you what he was doing. He was squatted like this. And he was standing right here. This is him. He's a yellow guy. But he's black. And he was squatted in here. Not maybe this is one solid line. But you know how berry bushes grow. They're kind of loose. He was squatted in there. And every time I would lean, he would stick his face into the thicket. And I'm like, what is that thing? And he squatted like this. And I saw the massive shoulder here. I saw his arm. I saw where the thigh and the calf crease. And I followed down. And I see an ankle bone and 3 outside toes on his right foot. And I realized that's a people foot. And I realized what it is that I'm seeing. And all the wind left my body. You know when you have a dream and you're trying to scream and you can't make any noise? I wet my pants. I ain't proud of that, but I'll tell you, I have to explain this to you because this is what I went through. And I couldn't move. And my fight or flight mechanism kicked in. I dropped my bowl and I ran home. I told my parents, I saw a monster, I saw a Bigfoot. And again, my parents are pragmatic. They grew up during the Depression. Their definition of monster is hunger and Hitler, okay? Bigfoot is silly. There's no such thing. You saw a deer or a dog or somebody's messing with you, but you did not see a Bigfoot. Now, I'm a bright child. I'm an artist. I used to love to copy comic book covers. I learned all about anatomy, drawing comic book covers. I know all about foreshortening. I know what muscles looks like. I know, and what I saw was no damn deer. But the damage was done, so to speak. And my psyche was crippled. And I had nightmares for years. The first few months after that, it was every night I had nightmares. It affected me so much. And I'd wake up crying, screaming. And my mother would come into the room, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'd say, "Bigfoot, Bigfoot." And see, the creature that I ran into was not threatening at all, was not trying to terrorize me. It's speculation, but in retrospect, I think it was hiding its face to keep from scaring me, okay? I really believe that, because every time I would shift, he would shift his face into that bush. But the Bigfoot in my dream wants to eat me. He looks like a silverback gorilla. He's got teeth like this, and they're bloody. And let me go back. So I'm showing this area here because my grandparents' house was here. And like I said, this is right now. This is a Google image. What happened to me was 30-some years ago. The cluster of trees is gone. There used to be a cluster of trees that sat between my grandparents' house and my house. And in my dream, that's where this Bigfoot lives. And I'm trying to get to my grandmother's house, and this Bigfoot won't let me. Okay, so that's what my nightmare is. But sounds real sweet and innocent, but it's terrifying. So I ended up still having these nightmares, and my mom would come into the bedroom and say, "What's wrong?" And I'd say, "Bigfoot, Bigfoot." And she's like, "You got to stop doing this. You're going to drive yourself crazy. You can just stop what you dream about. It's not that easy, Ma, So that happened in 81. The following June in 1982, my father died. As I told you, he wasn't in the best of health, and he had heart issues, and he died the last day of school. And my mother didn't lose it, but my mother kind of checked out. She grieved very hard, and it was time for me to let go of the silly things. So I had to stuff it. And I stuffed it for years. I grew into my, late teens and went off to college. And, anytime I always say this, I'm not blaming Bigfoot for all my adult problems, okay? It's not that. But how I dealt with things on an emotional level was deeply impacted by this Bigfoot encounter. If I had issues with relationships, I'd stuff it. I'd drink, do drugs. If I had issues with anything, deaths, somebody died in my family, somebody did a wrong or whatever, instead of expressing how I felt about it, I would stuff it. I would cover it with drugs and alcohol. And I developed a pretty good healthy habit with it. And I still had the nightmares, okay? Well, this went on forever, it seems. But I'll fast forward real quick. I got to 2009, and, over the course of my years, I adapted my life and my things to do around not going in the woods. First of all, after I had my Bigfoot encounter as a kid, playing Daniel Boone and chasing, that all ended. I didn't do it anymore. After my dad died, we let go of the cattle stuff. We didn't have animals to tend to anymore. So I didn't, but prior to my dad dying, we harvested firewood. And my father would say, we're going in the woods, cut wood. And I would pitch a fit. And I would sit there and shake and say, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. And my dad knew I was scared, but he thought, my brother dropped a tree on me once, okay? The top of the tree hit me and knocked me down. It didn't hurt me, but my brother caught it from my dad over that. So my dad assumed that I was afraid to go to the woods because I was afraid a tree was going to get dropped on me. So he would tell me, all my job was as a kid was just to stack brush. You know, when they cut the limbs off, I would gather them and stack them. And I stayed as close to the truck as I could to do that. So I would wait till they got all the branches trimmed, run over, drag all the branches in a pile, and then go back and sit underneath the truck and wait, because there was no way I was not going to be near that truck if that thing that I saw comes out of the woods. This is how I adapted. As I got older, people would go, I love to fish, and I love to go fishing. People would say, hey, buddy, you want to go fishing with us? I'm like, well, sure, where are you going? And if they said, oh, we're going to dock fish over here, or my buddy's got a boat, we're going to do it Loudon Lake or whatever it might have been, I'd be like, yeah. But if they said, we're going to go up Coker Creek and trout fish, come back down and trout fish the creek down, oh, I can't go. I just remembered my wife's got something to do with the family that I'm just giving you an example, but that's what I would do. I adjusted my whole life. Anything that had to do with getting in the woods. We had family barbecues at the state park or something. I always stayed in the pavilions. There was no way I was going walking on the walking trails or anything like that. So that's how I adapted my whole life. We get to 2009, and I have a son. I have 3 children, and I have 2 stepchildren. But my youngest son is 13 now. But when he was 10 years ago, he was participating in a church program. I don't know if it was Easter or Christmas. I don't remember exactly what program it was, but I was sitting in the back pew of the sanctuary as the kids were practicing their program. And there was these 2 older guys standing and just having a casual conversation. And one of them was a retired park employee. He wasn't a ranger, but he was a park employee. And he said to the other guy, well, did you hear somebody saw Bigfoot up at Indian Boundary Campground the other day, or something to that effect. And I caught it. My ear caught it. And as soon as I heard that name Bigfoot, my brain did. And lo and behold, I start having the nightmares again. So here I am, 40 years old, waking up screaming, scared of Bigfoot. And I got tired of it. I said, I am facing my fear on this. I'm tired of it. My ex-wife, we were married at the time. We had a very troubled marriage. And we were in intense counseling at this point, where intense meaning I would go one day, she would go one day, and then we would go one day, and working on our marriage. And one of my individual sessions, I looked at the therapist. His name is Neil. I said, Neil, this was right after, the day after I had a nightmare. Now, when I have these nightmares, they stay with me for the entire day, because I'm shook to the core about it. And I looked at Neil and I said, Neil, I got to talk to you about something, and it don't have anything to do with what we're here for. And that's when it's a big thing to step out and talk to a professional, licensed clinical social worker about, mythological creatures. You know what I'm saying? I'm taking a huge leap there. So I told Neil what happened to me as a kid. He didn't bat an eye. He's a very cool guy. He's a very, he's in the know, so to speak. I'm not saying he saw one, but he's in the know. And so he suggested that I go online and try to find somebody who's had similar encounters or has had encounters and talk about it with them, initiate some conversation. As I said, I developed a healthy appetite for chemicals. I ended up going to rehab in 1996, and I got very involved with a 12-step program. And in 12-step programs, that's what they teach you, to talk about your stuff. If you talk about your stuff, it gets it out of your head, and you can make room for more stuff, So I embraced the whole face your fears, live your dreams mantra of this Bigfoot thing. I said, as much as it scares me and terrifies me to talk about it, it's good for me. So I reached out online, found somebody. They had a Facebook page. I developed a friendship. They invited me into a group, C'est la vie. And the group was a pro-kill group. I didn't know it. They kept hitting me up for, where'd you say you had this encounter as a kid and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, upstate New York, but my still family land. I'm not sending somebody up there. I've had people ask me, can we go research that area? No, I can't do that to my folks, or my family. My mom doesn't live on the property. My brother does, and I have an uncle that still lives there, and no. So, but I found out the hard way that this was a pro-kill group, and I didn't want to get involved in that, So somebody suggested that I talk to Tom Cantrell. I talked to Tom. Tom introduced me to Arla. Arla introduced, and then I met Keith Bearden, and I met Alex Munoz, Midnight Walker, and I met these people, and I was comfortable enough to tell them what I dealt with. And they helped me. I created a Bigfoot group on Facebook. It's called Sequoia Sasquatch Society. If you'd like to join, you can come on there and check it out. But I'm going to tell you what happened to me after I developed a relationship with these people and we started talking about this laid-back gathering that we do. I'm part of the core group that had the first laid-back gathering, and I've been to every one of them. And the spot that we go to is a hotbed. It's an active place. And they come right into the campground. I drink Mexican Cokes, in the tall glass bottles. I love them because they got real cane sugar in them. They taste like they do when I was a kid. And I always take a few of those with me when I go camping. And when I'm done with them, I always have a cardboard box that I can put them in behind my tent. Well, they took them bottles. You can hear them clinking them in the woods. Coons don't do that. Coons take stuff, but they're not going to take a Coke bottle for sure, But that's one of the weird things that's happened to me there. I became very comfortable going to the spot. And what's interesting is when I embraced my Bigfoot thing, my Bigfoot knowing, I'm not a believer, I'm a knower, okay? And when I embraced that, a lot of synchronicities started happening in my life. At first, it started off bad. I went through a divorce, and I had to work on myself, and I started dating myself, and I took time off from relationships. And when I did that, and then I started dating, I've met women in bars and that kind of stuff. I'm a musician, I've known to play in bars. I'm a DJ, and, I do karaoke and emceeing and all that stuff. So, but it's not a great place to meet a woman, okay? Because there's 35 other guys wanting to, vying for the same spot next to that lady. So I went online and started doing online dating, and I met my current girlfriend. And I came down to Georgia every weekend. I lived in East Tennessee at the time. I lived in Sweetwater, Tennessee. And I'd come down to Sewanee, where I live now, spend all weekend and go back. And I did this for a couple of months, and then I made the leap. My girlfriend says, move down here. Her daughter's father is deceased. So she's like, help me raise my daughters. You're so good with kids, blah, blah, blah. I have a lot of parenting skills under my belt. I have 2 adult children now, and plus my 13-year-old. So I made the leap and moved to Georgia. Well, lo and behold, all of my teachers from 2010 to 2013, those 3 years, we convene in Georgia. Of all places, Georgia. It's just it was very synchronistic that people like Arla from Oklahoma and Tom from Washington and all these people that I've grown close to and developed friendships with on Facebook, we're all convening in Georgia. And it's the first fall I've been in Georgia. So not only did I discover the love of my life, but I got to meet I call them my family. I got to meet all my family first, face to face. So the first laid-back gathering was very, very special to me. And we were doing them twice a year for a while. We did the April gathering and we did an October gathering. Well, schedules have changed and, people shift and that kind of stuff. We had a gathering a couple years ago when Bob Gimlin came down. And I had met Bob earlier that year at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. And super guy. I could never get to his table when they were at the conference because if you've ever been to that, it's one of the largest and oldest conferences there. It's a totally different element of people, too. I'm not saying it's all bad, but it's a totally different element. I could never get to his table. And his handler at the time was Tom Yamarone. And Tom and I are good friends. And he's like, well, what do you think of the conference, buddy? It was my first conference. And I said, it's great. I said, I've been trying to shake hands with Bob Gimlin, but I can't ever get to the table. And he said, well, we're going to breakfast in the morning. Why don't you go to breakfast with us? I'm like, all right. So I got up the next morning. And I got to have breakfast with Bob, sitting next to Bob. And we didn't talk about Bigfoot once. We talked about Yakima apples and horseback riding and breaking horses. And he's a fascinating guy, you know. And I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan. For me, Jesus is here and Johnny Cash is there. And it's not a coincidence they have the same initials, okay? I'm just kidding with that, but I'm a big Johnny Cash fan. And Bob is the Johnny Cash of Bigfoot, as far as I'm concerned, okay? Meeting him is like meeting Johnny Cash. Developing a friendship with him is like, oh, you know, calling him, talking to him on the phone. We send Christmas cards back to each other and, you know, that kind of stuff. So when I sit and connect with him, he's like talking to your grandpa, number one, but he's so full of stories. And like Keith talked about yesterday, there's nothing like hearing him describe the Patterson-Gimlin film as it's happening, how he was feeling, what Roger was doing, you know, that kind of stuff. So, such a neat dude. Well, he came down that year, and I camp with my dog. Now, that's a big step for me as well, to camp. Oh, my gosh. That's a big leap for me. To solo camp. Wow. And I've done that a half dozen times. I've camped by myself with my dog. You know, I'm getting ready to start not camping with a tent. I just barely set up my tent Friday when I camped down here, and I realized I'm ready to give up the false sense of security with a tent. You know, if they're gonna scoop you up, they're gonna get you. So I'm thinking about now I'm gonna get one of those hammock tents and just do it that way. But my dog can't sleep with me that way. So usually when I camp, I take my dog. Well, this year that Bob came down, we had a lot of great moments at the place. And one of the things that I loved about this was, you know, you see Bob, he's Cowboy Bob. He's got his, you know, his bandana and his cowboy. He's dressed to the nines, sharp dresser, you know. But he's a Yakima Indian, okay? A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that, you know. And one of the things, and Arlo will appreciate this, when we do our drum circles, one of the gifts I got from this place was watching Bob revert to his Native American self. A lot of people don't see that, you know, to see him not be Cowboy Bob, to be the Bob he is at his core, which is a native, you know, singing. And I mean, it was just amazing. We had a great weekend that weekend. And what my routine is when we camp there is the next day is a Sunday. Usually we camp Thursday through Sunday. I usually get down there on a Friday, but Sunday I'll break camp. And then I have about a 2-hour drive from here to my house, or from the spot to my house. And so I walk my dog. We usually take a trail so he can do his potty and get worn out and sleep on the road. Because Cash loves to travel, but he don't like to ride, okay? As soon as he gets in the car, if the car starts moving, he has to put his head down or he has to lay down. I think he might get a little dizzy or motion sickness. I don't know what it is, but I like to have him be rested, or have him at rest time, or have him be exercised when we travel, because he's just better. So we were walking this one particular trail, and we have had Keith talked about them in the conference last night, talking about the eye shine. I was interacting with him when I was in the crowd. This was the same trail, but it was in the daytime. And as he described it, you got the trail, you've got trees and a slope here, and then it goes down like this. There's a creek, and then the slope goes back up here. And that slope that went up on this side was where we saw the eye shine. Well, what happened to me on this trail is I'm walking up the trail, and I'm fairly into it, and Cash, he just runs, does what he wants, and comes back to the trail. But he was with me at the time. But as I'm walking, in my peripheral vision, I kept catching a black flash. And what it appeared to me in my eyes, if you can imagine this, is it appeared to be like a crow flying from tree to tree. But every time I turned my head, I wouldn't see anything. I'm like, where is that bird? And then I started getting the goosies. You know, my hair started standing up. And how much time do I got? Okay. So I don't want to keep going on and on. But so the hair stands up on my neck, and I'm like, so I see this thing again. And when I look, I see the crown of its head. I think it was a head. And what I did is I did one of these. You know, you think you can fool these things, and you really can't. But I got lucky, okay? And I'll tell you what I did is I was messing with Cash, and I was like, good boy, dog. You know, that kind of thing. Good boy, Cash. Come on, buddy. And I acted like I was taking a step, and then I turned my head like that. And I watched him squat down. And all I saw again was the same crown of his head. But I saw him move down, and he knows I saw him, or it, whatever it was. So I described this earlier. I'll clean it up, though. I saw this, and I spoke, not a whisper, but low, kind of like this. And I said, no effing way. Just like that. And suddenly, guys, I have a sound in my head. And it's my voice. And it goes, no, 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 no. Then it split into 2 tones. And then 4 tones. And then 8 tones. And I'm a musician. I'm hearing these chords in my head. And I'm watching my dog at this point because Cash is standing there like, what the hell are we waiting on? Let's get out of here. It's not affecting him at all. But I got Gregorian monks in my head, okay? And I'm like, what the heck? And it went on. I really don't know how long it went on. But it's all, and it started out, it was going the same rate as my heartbeat. So no, 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 no. And that, the root, the main part of that chanting in my head was going to my heartbeat. But at one point, there's so many tones that I can't count them, okay? But I've got them all, most of them are going, and it's evolving from a no to a nah to a new. So, and then it kind of took on a life of its own. So it's going, no, 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 no. And there's one way off in the distance, like some crazy tone going, no, 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 no. And I know this sounds crazy, okay? But my entire body is vibrating. My jaw, and my ears are popping. Or not popping, I should say. It's like, when you're going into higher elevation and your ears won't pop. That's what's going on in my head. And so I'm swallowing, and I'm still looking at Cash. And I'm not even looking at what I saw anymore. You understand? But I'm still listening to this tone, and I'm still shaking, and I feel nauseated, and I feel woozy, and then it just stops. And it's quiet. I look over, whatever I saw in the woods was gone, okay? But this feeling is still with me. I'm scared now. I run home. I run back to the car. I get Cash in the car, and I'm driving home. I have a 2-hour drive. I don't remember any of it. I felt like I had been separated on a molecular level and put back together, and either something was missing or something was extra, okay? I had also pulled a couple of ticks off me that weekend. So when I'm at home, every night I go to bed, I feel strange. I don't feel myself, but I go to bed and hope the next morning I would feel normal. Nope. And so I started worrying, maybe I got Lyme disease or something. I start trying to give it a physical attribute or a physical root, a cause. I go to the doctor. I think I got Lyme disease. Well, we don't have Lyme disease in Georgia, sir. Well, that's a lie. Yes, they do. But they tested me, and I didn't have Lyme disease, and I'm struggling with this feeling. And like I said, I thought when it happened, it felt like something had separated me and put me back together, and either I was missing a piece or a piece was extra. Well, I found out I got something extra, okay? I've always had these abilities. I'm empathic. I sense energies. I'm intuitive. I don't predict the future, but I've had dreams that things happen, And it used to be rampant as a child. I just have it. I thought everybody did it. But as I got older, into my late teens, and, I think what I was putting into my body had a lot to do with it, it kind of dissipated. Well, buddy, it come back with a vengeance. Good or bad, I have it still. That way I felt back in whatever it was, 2016, 2017, I still feel that way. It's become my normal. But my empathic and intuitive skills have gone through the roof. And I'll tell you a situation that happened to me that freaked me out. I was having a great day one day, driving to work. It's a beautiful morning. I got my coffee. I got my music going. I got my sunglasses. It's a beautiful sunny day. And I'm in the left lane driving down this road in Sewanee, and I'm at a stoplight. And I don't have anything bad going on in my life, nothing. I'm flooded with a feeling of utter grief comes over me. Like somebody just died, something. And I got tears rolling down my face. I got my sunglasses on and I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? You know, what's this feeling? Why am I so sad all of a sudden? There wasn't a sad song on the radio or anything, you know. And I take off my glasses and I wipe my eyes and I look around because I'm embarrassed. I look around to see if anybody's watching me, and I look over to the car next to me, and in the car next to me is this 20-something-year-old girl, and she's either received some bad news or something, and she is bawling her eyes out. And as soon as I looked at her, it wasn't a bell, ding, 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 but I had more of a, come on, you know, as the only way I can describe the sound. But I knew that what I was feeling, I connected to her when I looked at her, and I realized that what I was feeling was her feelings. And that's what I'm going through right now, is that my empathic stuff, it messes with me because I don't know if I'm feeling mine or somebody else's. But Bigfoot is a great connector. I've been connected with a lot of cool people. So I've explained to a couple of people what's happened, and I'm slowly opening what's happening. And again, I'm not blaming Bigfoot for my problems, okay? It's not that. I take full responsibility for my adult issues. But I blame them for this. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing what they've done. It just is what it is, you know? It happens. And so this is where I'm at now. I'm at the point where I'm trying to figure out how I can control this, how I can learn to discern what's mine and which somebody else's. And so, but that experience terrified me. And I stopped going to McIntosh. And I hadn't been down there except Friday. And had I not been invited to speak at this program, I probably wouldn't be here. But I faced my fears, and I had friends ask me to come and speak. So that's what I did. And that's why I'm here. And it was good for me. We were there, and I was there by myself yesterday before I came here. And I had something happening to me again out there. And you know, I'm not saying look at me, but I'm a bit of a magnet for this. Like I said, I don't know if I've opened, if a port's opened, if a phone line's open. I don't know what it is, but when I'm at McIntosh, I'm overwhelmed with energies at that place. And it's really hard for me to even sleep. It's hard for me to sleep. When we normally camp there, I usually bring my earbuds and put them in my ears because the sounds freak me out, okay? I mean, we've heard them they walk right into camp. And I don't want to hear it because I don't want to poop my pants in my sleeping bag, okay? Number one, because I'm growing. I'm a babe in the woods, so to speak, but I'm getting better with it. But what I have learned through all this is that I have to face my fears. And, you know, that's some of my recovery background. Face your fears, live your dreams. So I grabbed this thing by the bull horns, and I'm facing my fear, especially this internal thing, because, you know, sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to know what the hell you're feeling. You know, it's not that I don't care, but sometimes I don't want to know because I got my own stuff happening. And so I come here to tell my story because it's unloading my pile, so to speak. And there's a big split in the Bigfoot circles. Those of you that know, there's a big split. There's the science guys, and there's the woo-woo people, okay? We're called the woo-woo people, okay? We're called the flute players. You know what? Some of the best people I ever met were flute players, okay? I toured with the Grateful Dead, went around and saw 40-something Grateful Dead shows in the 90s. I checked out for a while in the 90s and found myself. And there's some amazing hippies out there, okay? That's why I gravitated to these types of people. You see the artwork and stuff, you know, it's got a very bohemian, hippie edge to it, okay? And I was drawn to that. I'm drawn to energies because I didn't know anything about this. I've had this ability my whole life, but I didn't know that everybody doesn't have it, you know? We all do, by the way. I mean, not everybody's tapped into it, you know? But what I have discovered in this group is that I'm in a comfortable place. And, you know, you can believe what I have to say or not, you know, but research it yourself. You'll want to find out that You know, there's some things out there in the world that have scientific explanation, and you know, it's electricity. Science. There's lots of science in the woo-woo, and there's a lot of woo-woo in the world. So to sit there and have just strictly a science-minded, these are flesh and blood creatures that do not have, you know, that are wood apes, that are, you know, you gotta be open-minded when it comes to this kind of stuff, because you miss so much being closed-minded. Autumn Williams wrote a book a while back called Enoch, okay? And she put in there, basically the story is that if we continue to research and do the things that we have been doing, I'm paraphrasing it, but we will ultimately end up chasing our own tails. And that's what I'm afraid happens between the science versus the woo-woo people. Science people discount the woo-woo stuff all the time just because it's woo-woo and it comes outside the parameters of normal, paranormal. It's not saying it's normal, it's just more than normal. So if I can have you all take anything from what I'm speaking to you about today is, if you're a science-minded guy, there's science in the woo. Focus on the woo. Cloaking, you know, like Bigfoot, there's a very good scientific explanation for cloaking. It's called photosynthetic piezoelectric induced transparency. Okay, squid do it. You know, there's a lot of different animals in the world that do that. And it has to do with diet and, you know, energies and that kind of stuff. And there's a reason these things are called the gods of the stone, and why you find them, and they're drawn to limestone and that kind of stuff, because they tap into that energy. And they're able, through diet, I believe. Now, this is just not me, but Pearl Prohoda wrote a big book about this. You can look her up. But she talks all about this PPIT, and it would explain cloaking. That's science, guys. It ain't woo-woo, it's science. And so, in closing, keep your minds open. Don't make fun of the woo-woo people, because they got a lot to offer. And if you need to, I always suggest that you pair up with somebody that has woo-woo and talk to them about the science part of the woo. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find a lot of science in it. I appreciate your time. Thanks for letting me share this. I think I got one more picture. Let's see. No, am I done? Oh yeah, I got Patty. I had to show Patty one, but you know. Anyways, thanks again.